are gathered here today in this court of law regarding the attempt murder case of Merlinda Haynes. Ms. Carol Ann Bond is being held accountable for attempt murder. Carol Ann Bond attempted to poison her husband's mistress, Merlinda Haynes, with toxic chemicals on numerous accounts over the course of several months. Defense, how do you plead?
Your Honor, my client here is innocent.
I'm innocent, I say. There is no solid evidence regarding the attempted murder.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, here is solid evidence of Ms. Bond mixing toxic chemicals in Ms. Haynes' drinks. Citizens of this court of law, I argue that my client should be prosecuted under the state of law of Pennsylvania instead.
Order! Order in the court! Prosecutor, what's your evidence regarding the matter? Pause! Hello, my name is Bridget Jimenez, and the case that was in session relates to the 10th Amendment of the Constitution. The 10th Amendment, in simpler terms, is the section of the Bill of Rights which states that any power that is not given to the federal government is automatically given to the people or the states. Take it away, Lauren.
Thanks, Bridget. Relating back to what Bridget said, the 10th Amendment's most important concept is that it provides for the general principles of federalism as the form of the United States government. The following list consists of the rules that the 10th Amendment permits the state to determine: marriage, divorces, driver license, voting, state taxes, job and school requirements, rules for the police and fire departments. On December 15, 1791, the 10th Amendment was ratified to the United States Constitution. This amendment was inserted into the Constitution largely to relieve some tension and to ease the fears of state rights advocates who believed that the newly adopted Constitution would enable the federal government to walk all over the states and their citizens. The amendment was adopted because of the intellectual influence and personal persistence of the anti-federalists and their allies. It was written as a way to emphasize the limited nature of the powers delegated to the federal government. It entrusted just specific powers to the federal government, the states, and the people, with some small exceptions, and they were now deemed free to continue exercising their sovereign powers. The most well-known court cases that relate to the 10th Amendment consist of Hammer versus Dagenhart, that occurred in 1918, United States versus Butler, that happened in 1936, and the United States versus Darby, that happened in 1941, and the court case shown in the previous scene, United States versus Bond, 2011. This amendment has its pros and cons. The good part of it is that it limits the power of the federal government and letting the states retain sovereignty. For example, the state have power to tax and state minimum wage. The cons on the 10th Amendment is that states can try and avoid some federal regulations such as labor and/or environmental control. The connection that the 10th Amendment has on today is the power to regulate marriage, which is given to the states because they argued that it was their right to determine whether or not to allow same-sex marriage. Also, court cases are another connection to today, as shown in our commercial. Some examples of the impact the 10th Amendment has today is, as I mentioned before, the right to control marriage laws. In North Carolina, gay marriage isn't recognized, and there were many court cases in which states who opposed gay marriage were challenged. The main argument for the states opposed to gay marriage is that it is a state right and not the federal Supreme Court right to interfere with the rights given to the states in the 10th Amendment. This amendment was a good idea because each state should have their own power and not be controlled by the federal government. To put it into perspective, Think of this amendment as a sundae. In a sundae, there's ice cream and many other toppings of your choice added on top. The federal government is the ice cream portion, and the differentiating laws each state has are the toppings on the sundae. The ice cream will always be a part of a sundae, just as the federal government will always be a part of legislature. But different toppings are added to sundaes every time, just as new laws are passed in each state, thus limiting the power of the federal government. Without the 10th Amendment, I predict the U.S. would have been similar to that of a dictatorship country, as the federal government would be granted all power over the states.
And now you've learned all about